It is Friday, May 24th. Let's talk PlayStation. Welcome back, everyone, to another Blue Balls episode of LTPS. As always, let's begin with our PS Plus reminder. The May PS Plus Essential lineup still live on PSN. Make sure you claim those games. Also, PS Plus Extra and Premium, that May lineup is now live on PSN as well, which, as a brief PSA here, you might want to grab the Dave the Diver Godzilla DLC before that goes away. It's going to expire on November 23rd, so you've got plenty of time, but just do it now so you don't forget, even if you're not going to play the game now or in a year or so. That content is going to expire. Probably it's tied to the Godzilla license with the Toho company. So I imagine that's probably what's going on there, but just make sure you get that done. And then for the games that are going to be expiring, let's hope this is the actual list of games and it's not going to change within 2-3 weeks and then you only have a week left to play the games that are going to be expiring. So with that in mind, you have about a month left to play these games on the PS Plus game catalog. The main one there probably being Grand Theft Auto 5, a very big game if you have not played that just yet. Seems like a lot of the AAA heavy hitters on the game catalog are usually getting that 6-month license since that was added on. That was back in December, I believe. So yeah, usually the big stuff 6 months, everything else about a year. But otherwise, I don't have any other recommendations personally. I haven't played any of these games myself outside of maybe SpongeBob SquarePants, where that's a great weekend style game. And also on Premium, you might want to check out Baja Edge of Control HD. That one is expiring for Premium as well. Moving on to our first news story, we have a rumor about the upcoming Days of Play promotion, the annual promotion that Sony does, where they discount games, hardware, accessories, usually PS Plus as well. This is not official just yet, but this comes from Bill Kuhn writing for Deal Labs. They typically always find out this stuff if it's like right before it's going to get announced on the PS blog and things like that, usually a press release or something. So and the Days of Play promotion is usually around spring anyway, so this is probably happening very soon. They're claiming it's going to begin on Wednesday, May 29th. So it's something where we're expecting the 25% off discount for annual PS Plus memberships, a reduced price for PS5 consoles. They're listing this in euros, so that would be €4.99 for a disc console, $3.99 for digital. DualSense controllers are €50, which is always a great time to get extra controllers if you want the spare colors or something. But PSVR 2 hardware should also be about €100 off as well. So if you've ever been curious about PSVR 2, now is probably a great time to grab that as well. Now, in a related news story, and this kind of goes into the absence of a showcase or a state of play announcement, but it's another report from Bill Kuhn, writing for Deal Labs, about how we're going to get info very soon for Firewalk's Concord, the PvP sci-fi PlayStation Studios game that is still coming out this year, and we expect that whenever we get some kind of live stream, we're probably going to see more of this game, since Sony just recently confirmed that the title is still on track for this year. So this report from Bill Kuhn says that a second announcement about Concord is planned very soon. They estimate it's going to get announced within 15 days, and the announcement should include the introduction of playable characters and a glimpse of gameplay as well. A glimpse of gameplay sounds interesting. I don't know if that's a translation thing, but you would suspect this game gets maybe a more thorough reveal, but it really depends on what the company is planning on doing. Because obviously we thought this was probably going to be the week where if they're going to do a showcase, they'll probably confirm it this week for next week. State of plays usually have a smaller window, I guess we should say, right? So it'll be announced within that week and then debut that week. So there's a lot that can be said about that, but in the here and now, what we can say is that maybe they want to debut Concord actually at, say, Summer Games Fest, or it's something where it gets a teaser trailer on the PS blog during the showcase state of play presentation that we're still expecting, and then they show more gameplay at Summer Games Fest, which would not be unheard of. They did this with Spider-Man, where we got a very thorough gameplay trailer at the last showcase, but no release date, and we thought that was weird, but then only a few weeks later, we got that release date at the Summer Games Fest. So they could split it up that way. As far as not getting a showcase confirmed just yet, I'll say this. It could very well be today that they announce it. I always have to film these, Thursday nights going into Friday morning, basically, so I can't tell you if that's happening right now or not. But as far as showcases go, the company, there's really no sort of pattern here, right? They get announced on like Wednesdays, Thursdays. I believe they have done Fridays and Saturdays for showcases that are not state of plays, basically. So we're not outside of that window yet where the thing is going to get confirmed. Hello, Melissa. Just yet. Oh, she just set off Kendrick Lamar. Okay. Anyway, we're not outside that window just yet. Monday is going to be a holiday in the U.S., so if we don't get one over the weekend, then either it's a state of play, or it'll be like the first weekend of June, or the first week of June, I should say. But it's all speculative. We'll wait and see, and whenever something does happen, we'll of course talk about it as quickly as we can. Moving on to our next news story, it seems like SIE is still moving very slowly towards their goal of actually shipping things on mobile. We know Sony has formed the PlayStation Studios mobile division. They acquired Savage Game Studios, which were renamed to Neon Koi. We know they hired Apple Arcade's Nicola Sebastiani, and now he's gone. So there's been some turnover there, but a recent job listing shows that they're still very much committed to the space, with this job position being for a very big role that they're looking for, the mobile platform architect at SIE. Under responsibilities, you'll be responsible for designing the system architecture and back-end services for the mobile games platform. You'll provide leadership to the platform engineering team, establish pipelines for delivering high-quality games, and collaborate across teams to integrate the platform with internal services. For desired skills, they want more than 8 years in the mobile games industry, experience as a leader in an enterprise setting, and experience in designing APIs or related SDKs. So this is a very big position that they're looking to fill. It still shows their commitment to the mobile games platform. It's a very big $90 billion something industry at this point. Of course, Sony and Microsoft want to get involved. Microsoft is still very much in the position of wanting to build a third-party store, which they've now completely confirmed. That is not necessarily what this is referring to. This sounds like more of a, as it implies, a pipeline and framework for delivering games on perhaps a more consistent basis across various studios that they're working with. It seems like it's been a fairly slow process, but I'm always of the mind where I'd love to see if they're actually serious about this, because they've certainly tried mobile many times in the past 15 something years now at this point, and every single program or small little game that they put out is just completely forgotten after a year or two. Next up, the Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut on PC saw a very big launch this past week, where it's now the #1 debut for a PS Studios game that's single player, so not counting Helldivers 2, because it would not beat that, but for what is primarily known as a single player game for the, well, not counting Legends, obviously. The peak player count for Tsushima over the weekend was 77,000, which for the PC version of the 2018 God of War, that was the previous winner at 73,000. So it's not quite a good baseline number on how many copies were sold, but it does give us a good baseline view of how much interest there was in the game when it finally came out on PC, which for Tsushima, I mean, I love this game. The more time passes, the more I appreciate what Sucker Punch was trying to do with that game. It's just not only visually stunning, but like gameplay I think is really good, especially when you play on the highest difficulty setting. It just, there's something about it where the moment-to-moment combat sequences just really hit. So having said that, what I think is interesting about this is how it goes right in the face of the whole controversy for the PSN linking, or what is now optional for this game, and also Helldivers 2, when Sony reversed that decision on Sunday night, basically Monday morning. And during that upload, we talked about how it's like a massive oversight for Sony to go through with this, wanting to ship games on PC and require PSN when PSN itself is not officially in those countries and it's breaking terms of service. We can argue all day, every day about how, maybe it doesn't matter because people just make accounts anyway and nobody gets banned for it, which, as far as I know, that actually does not happen, right? Nobody actually gets banned for making PSN accounts in other countries. I have plenty of them, and I know many other people do, but either way, it's still a massive oversight. But the other side of this is that, Sony is still not dumb in the sense that, and this is maybe going to sound insensitive, but for lack of a better word, Sony understands that they're still primarily operating in the countries that to them matter. You know what I mean? Not to sound insensitive, but they're a big multi-billion-dollar corporation. Of course, they're going to properly ship and launch in the countries that for them their bottom line is going to make sense, and they'll be reaching most of the customers that they need to reach. So I'm starting to think that for this whole country restriction and the PSN linking, I feel like we're not going to see any sort of immediate term resolution here that actually either lets these games get sold again in all those countries, or they start working with Steam or something and allow it to be sold. Whatever the case is, I feel like they're just going to kind of sweep this under the rug and just start shipping more PC games, either require PSN, make it optional, but they'll still restrict the game in those countries for the foreseeable future. That's at least what I assume is going to happen now that this game had such a very successful debut with what is clear no sort of obvious drawback. Moving on to our next news story, we have a bit of a shakeup going on at Arrowhead where the CEO, Johan Pilestead, is actually stepping down from the CEO role, and in his place is going to be Shams Yergani, where he's been in the business for a long time, recently spent 12 years in senior leadership roles at Paradox Interactive, and so he'll be taking his place, and Johan will actually be stepping into the CCO and chairman role so he can spend more time actually being on the creative side of game development. So Johan mentioned that with Helldivers 2 out, he's had more time on the business side of things rather than the creative side, and he just wanted to get back into that process. So as part of a larger interview on GamesIndustry.biz, Johan also spoke about the company's future and where they want to go, and he says, and I quote here, "We pride ourselves on being an independent studio. We have to see what the future holds, but there's nothing in the plans where we want to be acquired by somebody. I want to see how high we can fly, and bringing Shams on board, we have a good potential to realize that future of turning into the next From Software or Blizzard. The goal of the studio is to make really great co-op games. We really want to turn Arrowhead into a flagship studio, where people who want to make these kinds of games say to themselves, I want to work at Arrowhead. When we were growing up, we really wanted to work at Blizzard. It was one of the bucket list places to work at. I think Arrowhead has the potential to be that." Now, on the back of all this, they also are in the process of slowing down patches for Helldivers 2 to take in more community feedback to balance any changes that might be planned for the future, since that's been an ongoing thing with Helldivers 2 lately, is the amount of patches and the nerfing of many weapons and this sort of, I guess, horizontal game design and not necessarily the vertical of weapon creep, power creep, and things like that. So there's a lot going on in Helldivers 2 right now, but I found that interview quite noteworthy, and that, well, at least for the studio's position right now, they don't want to be acquired. At least for Sony, we kind of talked about how it's a matter of there's probably really no pressure to even go about doing that anyway. They own the IP. I'm sure Arrowhead is happy to be in the position they're in, which is they've got this incredibly successful game that they can be working on for a number of years now, and Sony's been a great partner for them, is what we keep hearing, right? So there's really probably no pressure to even take that any further, and Arrowhead has a lot of great aspirations. It's interesting to see them openly say they want to really scale up in that way, which they do also point out that they don't necessarily want to be this 500 staff studio that is maybe too big for their own good, but they do want to be this place that is highly desirable to work at and make the kind of experiences that is, well, in the same veins of a From Software. Now, moving on to a minor update for Death Stranding 2 on the beach, where Hideo Kojima himself was on the NHK program Hideraji, where he gave a development update for this game, and he mentioned that apparently DS2 just completed the motion capture filming and recording, and so now they're going to spend the next year or so on the production side, really focusing on that and making adjustments. That's at least what was said. I don't think he really elaborated on that much further, so there's not much we can really infer by that other than I think the expectation is that this is it's going to land in 2025, but, a year from now would maybe prop this game up as a fall 2025 game, which I think is a relatively safe bet. I will say, I think a lot of publishers are going to be watching Grand Theft Auto 6 carefully in terms of where that's going to fall as well, so you don't want to be too close to that game, which is expected fall 2025 as well. So you don't, it doesn't matter who you are, you're probably going to be moving away from that game. I think all publishers are going to be watching that very closely, but assuming Kojima is on time with this game, then yeah, we might be able to see this game ship before 2025 closes out. Now, getting into the Stellar Blade developer Shift Up, where for their initial filing for an IPO, they put some interesting things in the application document, that being a possible sequel for Stellar Blade and also a PC version as well. So the document does list their new IP that they're developing called, or rather it's codenamed Project Witches, which that's public info that's planned to ship across console and PC. That's at least the only thing listed right now. But they do reference established IP like God of War and Final Fantasy, how those can overall ship tens of millions of units across their lifetime over various sequels. So they're exploring that as well for Stellar Blade, and they're also planning new content via DLC and IP collaboration, which patch 1.03 is due today, and that includes new outfits and some quality of life improvements. And also a photo mode is on the way as well. I think they just confirmed that today, which was pretty interesting as well. But yeah, it seems like this game is doing quite well, and it also would appear as though Shift Up has the liberty to go and do that, because the fascinating thing about this game, and maybe more of a curiosity on my end, is simply why did Sony not want to lock this game down a bit further like they did with, say, even just Rise of the Ronin, which is also a bit of an outlier. That's the only third-party PlayStation Studios game. Up to that point, PS Studios included in-house first-party studios and also second-party developers as well, so an external team, but they're making a PlayStation-owned IP, which that was a language that changed from Worldwide Studios. That was always just strictly in-house developers. But with Rise of the Ronin, it seemed like, okay, they're willing to put this label on games that maybe Sony doesn't own the IP, but at least they've locked down that particular game in perpetuity. You almost have to wonder, why did they not pursue this with this game? And I'm inclined to say it seems like Shift Up maybe was not willing to do that in the first place because, well, them filing an IPO, I think, tells you all you need to know. They want to have this autonomy. They don't want to be acquired, right? They want to really scale up and become something much bigger, which also implies that this game can eventually ship on PC. Maybe not on Xbox. Sony likes to do that, is just simply bar the other guy in those kind of exclusivity agreements. But yeah, probably a PC version and maybe a sequel, which they would not need the financial backing of Sony now that they've probably got their foot. They're probably on their feet now, and them going public as well means they'll have the capital to go off and do that on their own, probably. So that could maybe ship on all platforms as well. It really depends. In other PlayStation Studio news, we have a final send-off for London Studio, the long-standing PlayStation Studio that Sony is shutting down, or rather they announced that they would be closed back in February. And so they actually put out one final message on their official account on X where they say, and I quote here, "For over 20 years, London Studio has been home to some exceptionally talented and wonderful people in the games industry. As we close the doors and all go forward to new adventures, we wanted to say a heartfelt thank you to all of our past and present players and colleagues who have supported us over the years. We've had one wild and wonderful journey." So, not much to add there. I'll just kind of echo the same sentiment I'm still feeling about this closure, and that's that it's really disappointing when you consider this is a long-standing OG PlayStation studio, right? If you consider the prior formation of them, which they then have roots with Team Soho and that one portion of Psygnosis. I mean, they go back further. It's you could argue that they're like the original PlayStation studio, basically, even though London Studio proper were primarily shipping SingStar titles and iToy and iPad and just experimental camera titles and things of that nature, which I still always enjoyed those games. I actually played a large portion of their portfolio. I mean, I'm not going to front, I enjoy and really love SingStar. So even for those kind of games, I mean, I spent a lot of time with them, and that kind of stuff is going to be sorely missed, especially knowing that they did not get the chance to really return back to more standard affair 2D games, and maybe could have entered this second era of London Studio, putting behind all that stuff and going into something completely different. It's it's disappointing that we didn't get that. All right, let's get into Sony's 2024 corporate strategy meeting, which was not the most exciting thing out there, but there certainly were some things worth talking about. So this is the less exciting meeting where they're going over more of the broad organization, how they're planning on, approaching their mid to long-term plans and things like that, or really short to mid-term, I should say. Next week is going to be much more interesting because that's going to be the business segment briefing, and that's where SIE themselves and that leadership, which we assume will be primarily Herman Hulst and maybe also Hideaki Nishino. I know Eric Lempel will probably present as well, but they'll be going over slides for the business, and we'll have a lot more to discuss there. For now, though, we do have a few things to point out as it relates to the SIE business. So the one thing we can mention is that, Sony's made a lot of minority investments in Epic, and we know that's actually being used directly for Torchlight, their facility for filmmakers and creatives. So they're using Unreal Engine to run simulations during the creation process. Also, a big part of their mid to long-term plan, the growth plan, I should say, is maximizing the value of their IP. So that's exploring synergies across the company. We've seen them do this a lot lately. So that's things like PlayStation Productions, where they're adapting game IP into TV and film. They also mentioned they want to expand on things like merchandising and location-based entertainment. So the PlayStation examples here being the Lego Horizon set, or the Last of Us horror experience in Florida, or the Uncharted roller coaster in Spain. And then at a certain point, they showed off this sort of generic B-roll footage of, I guess, their idea of what the future can look like down the road, especially utilizing AI and, again, location-based entertainment. And so we see like some tall necks from Horizon, and we see this like brief clip where somebody's holding this controller that is very weird with a floating screen. It's like, clearly whoever put that together is not at all from SIE, just definitely something where it's like, let's generically, make up all this stuff that we think is going to, I guess, look pretty for this presentation. But that was certainly a funny thing to see. But now going into the more fascinating part of this meeting, and that's the QA portion with the press and investors. So somebody was asking the company, how are they going to approach AI? How are they going to proactively utilize AI to possibly reduce costs for the business? And Kenichiro Yoshida said that they are a technology and entertainment company, so they will be using AI, but they must also protect the rights of creators. So he said one of the biggest opportunities would be gaming. That game development cost has become quite substantial, so the creation of assets and characters, those can be generated using AI, and also quality assurance testing can be done via AI as well. So those are the areas they can utilize it. Now, on the broad topic of IP acquisition, we also got a pretty interesting answer here. Yoshida-san mentioned that the last mid-range plan included a lot of mergers, so this mid-range plan is more about extracting value out of them, focusing more on return on investment instead of acquiring more. Which, the important thing to mention with that is that it doesn't rule out Sony doing more acquisitions, because this is right on the back of the Paramount stuff as well. They're still, in talks with Paramount to put in a bid, although the most recent news there is that it seems like they're trying to maybe not go for the entire thing with the $26 billion offer. Maybe they're trying to work out just certain portions of the business, that being IP, because that's what Sony is ideally looking for. But it's more of an opportunity thing, right? They're not necessarily going to aggressively pursue acquisition, more a matter of if something comes up like the Paramount thing, then they'll pursue it. But that is pretty eye-opening to know that we did come out of a mid-range plan where they did have a lot of M&A activity, especially for SIE, and it's something where right now they're basically saying outright, we're going to cool down on that. It's time to start earning a little bit back off of all those investments. Now, as for AI, that's a very direct answer. Probably the most direct we've had so far in terms of the PlayStation business. And in this context where it's not coming from SIE, it's coming from the very top, that being Kenichiro Yoshida and Hiroki Totoki. Between both of them, they're the CEO, president, CFO, chairman. So it's something where, SIE answers to them, not to say SIE doesn't want to use AI and it's the Sony group putting it on them, but it's a very eye-opening answer when, for the Sony group overall, about, hey, how are you going to use AI? How are you going to get down business costs? Yoshida's immediate answer for the entire business is, oh, well, for gaming, here's how we can reduce costs for game development because it's very expensive, and then giving examples like asset generation, building characters, and also quality assurance as well. So very direct, and something where it kind of dials back to that financial report from 2 quarters ago now, where Hiroki Totoki was visiting the studios and learning more about the business, and at the time kind of saying what needed to be said, which is we've got to start figuring out how to improve the margins for a lot of these studios and increase the return on investment, considering the development cost is quite high. I mean, this is not just Sony, mind you, because we're coming off a year where thousands of layoffs took place in the games business, and there's thousands more that happened at the start of this year. So it's one of those things where AI is going to have a place. It's always naive to suggest that it's not going to, especially in this kind of segment, but it's more about how they go about doing it. I mean, I've always said I would really appreciate if we go about it in a very ethical way, as some like to say, but it's a matter of, are you actually doing it? Is it going to be an extension of human work? Or is it a matter of replacing labor because that's a very expensive part of the business? Here in QA, like, okay, you're telling me you're not going to just replace some QA where you can to save money? That I don't feel great about, but I've heard from a number of studios and places that like generative AI is already like a big part of the development pipeline, and it is a great way to obviously control costs and get more done in a timely manner. I mean, games do take such a long time to release nowadays, which honestly, I would even push back on that, if only because we already have so many games coming out as is. Like, it's a genuine saturation point of there is so much content to consume, from big to small, even small studios that are a one-man team up to the very big AAA. Just so much stuff comes out. It's just a very vicious cycle. There's a lot that can be said on this topic, but at least for Sony, we've got a very direct answer as to how they're exploring AI right now, which we knew they were doing, but now we've got more of a direct answer. Now, as part of the corporate strategy meeting, we also had some separate interviews go up on Sony's site for them interviewing their own people, that being Neil Druckmann and Assad Kizilbash. So for Neil Druckmann, being the head of Naughty Dog, he was asked about AI, also projects he's working on and things like that. So we'll just cherry pick some of the more interesting things out of here. So for one question, he was asked about what advice he would give to the new generation of creators that are expected to expand the boundaries of games, film, and TV. And so Neil emphasizes that they need to master the fundamentals, not just the tools. So he says, and I quote here, "At Naughty Dog, we transitioned from hand animating Jak and Daxter to using motion capture in Uncharted, significantly expanding our storytelling. AI will allow us to create nuanced dialogue and characters, expanding creative possibilities. However, it's crucial to precisely direct these tools to achieve the intended outcomes." Another question was, how can Sony advance interactive, immersive entertainment and storytelling with its diverse capabilities? Neil says, and I quote, "You have to take risks to find new ideas that connect with audiences. And even though Uncharted was a chart-topping success, it was important for our studio to innovate again with a new franchise like The Last of Us. Many companies would insist on sticking to profitable franchises, but SIE's culture and philosophy empower us to pursue new ideas." Now, when one question asked, can you share a personal vision or dream project that you hope to see realized in the future of entertainment, Neil says, and I quote, "I've been lucky to work on several dream projects and am currently excited about a new one, which is perhaps the most thrilling yet." Towards the bottom, he says, "I'm eager to see how this new game resonates, especially following the success of The Last of Us, as it could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming." Which that is certainly an answer. That got a lot of people talking, and that was going to make some headlines, which, I mean, bear in mind, this is coming from Sony's own site where they're interviewing their own studio head, so it's going to have a certain level of, like, circle jerking going on, not to put flack on Neil or the organization, but, like, that's how this reads. The entire thing is how it reads. But I will also say, I mean, Naughty Dog is a very high caliber studio that in many ways is industry leading across many disciplines of game development. Some people just do not want to admit that, but that's what the studio is. Despite what you may or may not think about Naughty Dog or Neil Druckmann, or if you still have an axe to grind about how Part 2 was or whatever the case is, all that aside, I still genuinely enjoy the games that they put out, and it's the only concern with Naughty Dog has always been, they do have this level of scope creep with all their projects, and they just balloon into a very big size, and their development cycles can be very rocky and turbulent, and I hear that they're trying to do much better internally, which I would hope that's the case, and I hope it's getting a lot better there, so they're actively avoiding crunch and just creating a more healthy work environment that's conducive to, just worrying about on-the-ground employees and, well, how they may or may not also be using AI as well, since Neil does talk about that. Doesn't really say a whole lot beyond just how they are certainly using it and how they're trying to treat it as more of an extension, and you really have to master more of the creative side of things instead of just, entering in a command prompt and hoping AI is going to give you what you want. I think we all know you can't really do that with AI right now, but in 5 years, that's always the question. Even 5 years years seems like very far away given how rapidly it's progressed. So I'm not sure how much more we can say in the here and now, but I will say, as far as their next game goes, which I would assume it's a new IP. We're getting the new IP first, and then let's say part 3 second. And that's kind of the timeline I'm happy with, because I would like to see Naughty Dog try something different before this console cycle's over. So I would like to see something new, and I'm still genuinely excited for what the studio has cooking. I almost would like to think that part of the reason why Neil is, saying this right now, or maybe Sony was looking for this little thing that he could say to generate a headline, because again, a lot of the stuff is carefully crafted. Maybe that is because they are ready to maybe show a slight tease for what's to come. Now, the other interview on Sony's site with Asad Kizilbash, who is the head of PlayStation Productions and also the head of product at PlayStation Studios, he was asked about AI use and where he envisions gaming in the future, and a lot of it boils down to him picturing this landscape where gaming can be a lot more personalized and lean more on the narrative side of things and not necessarily realistic graphics. So he says, and I quote here, "In terms of gaming's future, I envision games becoming more personalized due to advances in technology and AI, enabling customized experiences for each player. Moreover, technological advancements will enhance emotional depth in games by allowing characters to be much more emotive and expressive, fostering more evocative storytelling. That's going to help a whole generation of creators be able to just create so much more emotion in the stories. The focus is going to shift from graphics or visuals to immersive narratives that resonate long after the controller is set down." Now, I'll tell you, I actually agree with Asad a lot here, just in the sense that, right now, gameplay is king, and it always will be king. I don't think that's changing at all as far as, what people are really looking for out of video games. It's always going to be, the number one fun factor point for many. You're always going to have a Arrowhead or a From Software come in and do something that's maybe a little bit against the grain or unconventional and find a new gameplay loop that is really fun and conducive to people just jumping in and playing long term. But having said that, as far as where we can go for visuals and storytelling, visuals are always great. I actually really enjoy gorgeous looking games, even if they are more by the books in the gameplay department. Something like in Order 1886, or more recently with Hellblade 2, where that game is now setting a new bar for visuals in the console landscape. That game looks just absolutely gorgeous and nutty looking, but some are gameplay is just kind of whatever, maybe even a step back from the prior game. That still wouldn't bother me, but I think there's just we can go further in the storytelling department by way of making characters emote more, be more expressive, be a bit more personalized. Some of my favorite stories ever told are in video games. That's why I love this medium so much, because it's interactive and you feel much more connected to what you're engaging with. But there is always this sense that it can go further, right? We can make these characters express more and feel more like genuine people, and it's one of those things where every discipline of the game, I think, has to come together to really sell a story. That's why storytelling I find is a really hard thing to do, right? Some games just can't really land it, and so I think there's a lot of room for that to go. That, and it's kind of right on the other side of the coin of visuals are not everything anyway. We're already at a point where it's always more of an art style thing than simply visuals. Most studios can't even, foot the bill for that kind of production nowadays. Not everybody can ship a Last of Us Part 2 or a Hellblade 2 for that matter, right? Now, one could argue the adoption of AI tools and the advancement there is going to make some more modest studios with a more modest budget be able to create those kind of experiences, which, hey, by all means, if that's the case, then that will probably happen too. But really, power has never really been a problem. Performance-wise will be an issue, sure, but visuals are not really a problem on PlayStation 5. This console and Series X can put out some amazing stuff, but there's simply not enough publishers that can even release those kind of games nowadays. It's really more of an art style thing, or looking at story, or just something that's different in the gameplay department. There's so many different ways to approach it outside of visuals. So in that sense, I do agree with Asad a lot. Now, with all that said, it is time for Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter, and if you'd like to win a $10 PSN code, it is so simple. We do this every single week on Let's Talk PlayStation. Follow the link down below, enter the Gleam giveaway, and supporting this channel a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week, because I'm trying to help pay for your games. Those are some of the stories from this past week that I wanted to talk about with you all. And we had a Sunday video which was going over that new SIE job listing about them wanting to move over a PlayStation library to some other different CPU architecture. And so that was a conversation about this portable PS4 rumor, and we kind of went into all that. We'll probably do more separate news stories that maybe are bigger and happen over the weekend, just so LTPS doesn't get into this 40-minute range that we've been doing recently with these really long stories or just crazy things going on in the gaming landscape. But with that in mind, yeah, I thought we were going to do the showcase discussion video, because I also thought like it was going to happen this week. I mean, maybe it'll happen today, in which case I'll see you later today for that discussion as well, or on Saturday. Whatever they plan on doing, be it a showcase or state of play, we'll probably talk about it right away, and we'll play it by ear. But that is pretty much it. So that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Panecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.